Hi. I've tried to film an intro for this a million times, and every single time, um, I just get really emotional, and so I'm just gonna do a little voiceover. This video was filmed right around a year ago to today. Today is the 2-year anniversary of my father passing away. Last year, around this time, I felt very isolated. I was obviously devastated, and um, I filmed this video because I just needed to talk, and I didn't want to talk to anyone around me. And so that's what this is. And then it literally sat on my desktop for the past year. I've never cried this way on YouTube. I've never been this vulnerable on YouTube. And it took a lot for me to feel confident and comfortable with uploading it. And really and truly, the only reason that I am uploading it is because of you guys. So, I sat down and I quickly gave this one last re-edit and watched it all the way through to make sure it's something I really want to post. And I took out some details that I decided I don't want online. But this is the story of the day that I lost my best friend. And if you're going through something similar, I'm so sorry and I love you so much. And that's what this is.
Hi, this is probably gonna be a really long video because I don't want to edit it, aside from like chopping out the awkward part at the beginning where I started the video and chopping out the awkward part at the end where I end the video. So be warned, I'm really nervous, my heart is like pounding, and sometimes when people make videos and say that, I roll my eyes into the ceiling because I'm like, oh yeah, like really set people up for how crazy you're feeling and how dramatic this video is gonna be. But I think in some ways I can't relate when people say that because I'm the least vulnerable human being on YouTube, I think. I don't talk about my feelings. I don't really talk about anything personal aside from my struggles with body positivity and my eating disorder. And those are very personal things, but in terms of how I'm feeling, in terms of my struggles, I'm like, my heart is pounding. I don't talk about it. And this is a problem I run into in my daily life as well, where I lose people in my life because I shut down and I don't talk to them about the ways that I'm feeling. I'm not honest with, like, I don't have good communication because I shut down. And I just want to talk about the way that I'm feeling. And it's been a year since my dad passed away. And I want to talk. I do this thing sometimes where I talk to myself in the shower or in the car or so, like anywhere. I'll talk to myself and I'll pretend I'm talking to you guys. And I sound a little bit crazy when I do it. But it's kind of like me preparing, and I don't know if this makes any sense, just sort of not even rehearsing, just I can freeze up on camera. I don't know what I want to say. I'll talk in circles. I'm really bad about talking in circles. And I've noticed that in my recent live streams that I'll talk in a circle over and over and over again, and I can't stick to the point because I'm so scatterbrained. I can't focus on anything. And part of that is because my life is chaos and because my brain is in chaos and I can't focus on anything. And recently I've been putting everything that I have into YouTube again. I've been uploading, you guys probably are seeing, I don't know when you're seeing this. October 1st is the 1-year anniversary of when my dad passed away. And I want to talk about my feelings and how I feel about it being a year. And I also want to talk about some things I've never really said on camera. And again, this is because I don't open up. And I think there are some really positive things to that, and I think there are some really negative things to that. So yeah, it is September. I'm sorry, I'm so out of breath because like I'm just so nervous. It is 2:59, September 26th, when I'm filming this. So it's a few days before, and I knew that this was gonna be a hard time. And within the last couple of days, I've gotten texts from friends just like, you know, hey, I'm worried about you. I know you're shutting down again. Like I do this. This is like a reoccurring theme where I stopped talking to the people in my life because I don't want to talk about my feelings because I hate being vulnerable. And October 1st is a year. And I never really, I'm gonna cry, I can already tell. I never really talked about what happened the night that my dad died. I made a really brief video kind of after his service, or maybe it was before, I don't remember. I made a video and I was still in so much shock, and I'm still in so much shock. And I still in a lot of ways have not processed this, and I don't know that I ever will. It's been a year and I still haven't opened the box that was sent to me from the hospital with his ashes and stuff in it. And I honestly don't know if I'm ever going to. Sorry. Normally I would cut this part out, but I just, so when my dad died, I got a call from him. It was a voicemail, and I had gotten it kind of earlier in the day, and that day I had stayed up all night editing on YouTube, and I went to bed at like 5 in the morning, and I woke up at like 11:30 or 12. And I got a call and I had a voicemail, and it was my dad saying he had had a heart attack, he had driven himself to the hospital, he was okay, don't freak out, to, you know, call him back when I could. And so I did, and I was like, holy, you know, what? And I called him and he answered the phone, and he was very scared and very shaken up, obviously, but he told me the doctors would call me from the hospital phone, whatever. So right after that, I told him I loved him. I told him I was on the next plane to Alaska, this and that, and he told me not to come because he didn't know if, he didn't even know where he would be. So my dad lived in a part of Alaska at the time, Juneau, that they didn't have a cardiology unit at the hospital. And this is like the first time I'm actually telling this story. Like, I don't think I've ever said any of this out loud, like verbatim, like telling this story. So I'm so sorry, I'm trying to pull myself together. Okay. The doctors called me and they said, hey, we're gonna airlift him to another hospital in Anchorage. And that was because they had a cardiology unit there and they could put a stent in his heart. But they kept reassuring me there was no sense of urgency because it was such a mild heart attack. My dad drove himself to the doctor. And because he was not really in pain, he was just really scared. And so I was like, well, thank God, you know, like this was really scary. My dad had had really bad health most of his life. And within the last 5 years, he had really started to take care of himself. And he had lost like a lot of weight. He was really, really, really healthy. And I knew that this was something where it was just like, you know, it just happened because things like that happen. And my dad was gonna turn 60 last October. So I got off the phone with the doctors and I called my mom and I called my brother and they didn't know. And my brother called my dad and they talked for a while. And my mom and my dad were divorced, and they weren't friends. They were friends for a while, and then they weren't friends at the very end. So my mom didn't talk to him. Sorry. I'm gonna turn, I don't know if this will work. I turned my phone on airplane mode. I don't know if that stops messages from coming through on my computer. So, my brother talked to him, and then I called him again, and I was talking to the doctors like every 20 or so minutes. If it happens again, I'll go close the computer and I'll just take the edit. So he talked to my brother and I called him and I talked to the doctors, like, yeah, I'll go, sorry. Okay, sorry. I was really gonna try not to edit it, but I don't want that going off the entire video with my manager, Jake. So yeah, I was talking to the doctors. They said there was no reason to worry. You know, we were just waiting for the plane basically to be able to take him to Anchorage. And so I wasn't panicking at all. Actually, I was just kind of like casually packing a bag, and I had called everyone that was in our family and just let them know, and everyone was talking to my dad. And I called my dad one last time just to get an update and just to talk to him. And he was really scared and he was really emotional. And I kept saying, Dad, like, everything's good. You don't have to be afraid. The doctors say that everything's okay. And you're gonna be fine. And he was so emotional. He couldn't talk. And he just told me, take care of Christian. And I love you. And I thought, you know, this is just him. My dad had a tendency to be a little bit over dramatic at times, and that's where I get it from. But I thought, you know, this is just him covering me just the same way that I do when I call or I text everyone that I love before I take off on a plane, I love you. Just because you never know. And I thought this was just him being a little bit scared, very scared, and just not knowing. And I told him, I love you and I've got this. It's okay. I'll see you soon. And crying on camera is so weird, FYI. So he was being transferred, and I called everyone every 10 minutes. I was trying to figure out how long he was going to be in one place so I could buy a plane ticket, because it was going to be a 12-hour flight, and if I went to the wrong spot, it was kind of irreversible. There were certainly flights from Juneau to Anchorage, but I wanted to be there where my dad was going to be so I could take care of him. And I finally got into touch with somebody, and it was a doctor at the Anchorage hospital, and they said my dad had crashed in the plane on his way to their hospital. And I was so confused because up until that point, it was from everyone just everything's okay and everything was going to be okay. I was so confused, and the doctor said I have to go, and he hung up, and I just sat there on the floor, and I called my mom and I called my brother and I cried. And Tyler was on guard duty that night, and I called him, and he had a really wonderful friend at the time who took over for him, and he was able to come home. And we just sat there, and I would call the hospital and there were no updates, and my dad had crashed, and I guess they got him back to being stable, and he crashed again. And I got a call. You know, when your heart is beating so loud, it's like all you can hear. I didn't even say anything. It was the hospital line, and the doctor just said, the doctor just said, I'm so sorry. I was so... My first reaction was anger. I don't remember a lot of what happened that night. I had to talk to a lot of people, and it's so weird to me how fast everything was moving. I had never experienced something like that before. and my dad wasn't married, and I had to make all of the decisions on everything. So, the doctor just told me he was sorry, and I just remember being so mad because everyone had told me everything was okay. And I don't know why that was my initial reaction. I was just in so much shock. I couldn't even process this. And the reason I was so angry was because I thought, if I knew this, I would have been on a plane to Alaska. But that would have been pointless because it was a 12-hour flight. And from the time that I found out my dad had had the heart attack to when he died, it was like a 2-hour window, if that. Maybe it was, I honestly don't remember anymore. And I started just, I didn't even say anything. The doctor just said, "I'm so sorry." And there was like this moment where all I could feel and all I could hear was my heartbeat. And I remember I was standing and I fell. I just collapsed. And I started just screaming. Like, I just remember feeling so mad. That's all I remember. It's just, I was so angry and I just started screaming. I think everyone has a complicated relationship with their parents, and my dad and I were no exception. And when I moved out when I was 19, it was bad. And it was because I had to be away from my parents, and I had to be away from my mom and dad, and it was just such a negative, awful, horrible environment, and I had to be okay, and I wasn't okay there. And the first thing I can remember, because that night is really blurry, the night that he passed away, was just thinking back to every awful fight we had ever had and wishing just wishing it hadn't happened. And so I feel like I mourned in a weird way because I was just really mad, and then I was really regretful, and then I think the next day it really sunk in that I was never going to hear from him again. At the time I was going through something, and I had just moved into a new house, and something had happened in my life that was really just silly a few weeks before. And I called my dad crying because I had had an anxiety attack. And when I freak out, when I have anxiety, when I have panic attacks, I like to clean, I like to organize. And so I'd had just a lot of issues that day. And so I said pack, I meant unpack, because I'm always moving, because there's always something to unpack, because I'm not ever in one place long enough not to be unpacking. So I had been unpacking, and I called him crying because I felt like I was going crazy, because I had unloaded this box of books, and I had put all of the books upside down, and I was like organizing everything wrong, and it's just, I was in such a weird spot right then, and my dad was just always there. And anytime that I was sad or anytime I was scared, that was who I called, and that was who I went to. And like a week before that, we had talked about the election and how it just our different political opinions, and we would argue and we would laugh, and it was, my dad was my best friend. He was so proud of YouTube, and he was so proud of everything. And I was writing my first book when, and I'd always written books growing up, and that was just like such a huge source of pride. He was so proud I think that was the coolest thing, was people say their parents are proud. But my dad was really, really, really proud. He thought it was so cool, and he wanted to go on trips with me, and I was planning on it. And I'm so sad that he never got to see a VidCon, or he never got to go to a book signing, because he really wanted to. And I processed that within the next couple of days, just how lucky I was. And people around me were so sorry and so sad, and they didn't know what to say. And my mom, I love her, didn't know what to say. Because she had, I don't think anybody understands how I felt about my dad. And the best way I can explain it is that, and the best way I've explained it to people, is that sometimes I think that we're given one soulmate, like one person who we're tied to, who we're meant to have in life. And I've realized that that doesn't have to be a romantic partner. It doesn't have to be a best friend. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be whoever you want it to be. But I think in a lot of ways, we have people that we're just tied to and who we're meant to be with. And when I was with my dad, it was just this feeling of safety, and I've talked about that before. But we liked all the same music, we liked all the same things. Even when we disagreed, we always laughed by the end, and we were so emotional about each other. And when we would fight, we would cry because we loved each other so much. I didn't feel like I even lost my dad. I felt like I had lost this massive part of me. And that was what I processed in the coming days. And even though I processed that, and I processed how much I loved him and how lucky I was to have him and how much he meant to me and how fortunate I was, I never really processed him dying. Which sounds like the easiest thing, right? Like, I haven't opened his ashes. I haven't spread them. I can't look at them. I haven't even read his death certificate or anything like that. It's all in a box. And when people ask me, he had like 10 life insurance policies because he just wanted Christian and I to be able to take care of things. And it's been a year and I haven't filed for anything because I don't care. I don't care. I don't know. When I have to face reality, when I have to think about it, I shut down. And it takes me out of commission for days. And in ways, I think that that's really unhealthy. And I think that's probably not the sign of someone who's processing a death very well. I'm so sorry. I had a huge coughing fit earlier, but it was when I started up the camera again. So the way that I feel about it and the way that I find a lot of peace, I'm gonna talk about now. And if you don't want to hear about religion, if you don't want to hear me talk about God, anything like that, that's okay. I don't expect anyone to believe the same things as me. I just want to talk about how I personally found peace. And this isn't a recommendation. This isn't anything. I like to think that the reason he didn't feel the pain when he had the heart attack, and the reason the doctors didn't think it was worse than it was if they did, he wouldn't have been able to talk to me on the phone. He, you know, if it had been worse, maybe he would have crashed sooner. It was 12 hours away from Alaska, and I wouldn't have made it in time to say goodbye. And Christian wouldn't have made it in time to say goodbye. And I think in ways, it's just, I like to think that that's how God was giving me my time to say goodbye. And you can think that's silly, but I never, you know, if it was a severe heart attack, it killed him. And if he had felt that, or if they had realized how severe it was, I never would have gotten to say goodbye. I never would have gotten to talk to him, you know? So in ways, I'm just really lucky. I also like to think that, you know, his kids were grown up, and my dad had the coolest life and was like the coolest person. And I like to think that in the way that I've processed and healed is thinking that he had moved to Alaska because that's where he wanted to retire, and he was almost done with teaching XYZ. He loved Alaska so much. That was like his bachelor dream. And I like to think that was him enjoying his last adventure, and that it was all just the way it was supposed to happen. Because if I don't think that there's a plan, and if I don't think that everything happened the way that it was supposed to, I'll be angry forever. And I don't want to be angry. I'm not an angry person. And like so many weird noises, I don't know. So that's how I get through it, I guess you could say. I cried a lot more than I wanted to, and I'm gonna try to make myself still upload this. Those are the things that I felt that I've never really explained. And that was scary, and that was hard. And I haven't really retold everything. But this year was hard and awful and great and sad and happy all in one. But mostly, in all honesty, it's just been really rough. And in a lot of ways, as I get older, I feel like the years are starting to fly by. Sorry, when I like cry or whatever, you know, anyways. In other ways, I think like it feels like it's been 20 years, and it feels like so much has been packed into this one year. Like I still don't even know how it's real. And I haven't talked about it because I didn't want to, and now I want to, and I want to share, and I want to maybe help someone who's going through the same thing not feel as alone. But I also wanted to explain myself, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to explain myself, but I want to talk about that, and that's all I can give you an explanation for. I can honestly say that has been the biggest thing that's happened to me, and the most insane thing that's happened to me. And if you guys knew the amount of lawyers that I have, and for things I don't care about, for so much stuff. He had a car and a house and things in Alaska and things in Georgia, and I am finding out about just so much. And I was 23 And now I'm 24, but that was my ankle. And I had to do that and lose my dad, my best friend, my soulmate, literally who I believe is my soulmate. And I had to deal with his estate. And I had to keep a business that I run moving. And there are people who have criticized me really heavily for doing so. I don't think that anyone has any idea how expensive the last year has been in terms of everything with my dad has been rough, and I'll just say that, and I'm not asking for pity, and in no way. That's why everyone was trying so hard to help me. Let's start there. When my dad passed, there were people who wanted to set up GoFundMes. There were people who wanted to give money towards his funeral. There were people like my church who, you know, they wanted to do everything for me. And I was so fortunate, and I was talking about this with someone the other day, in the sense that most people pay a lot of money for a funeral, and my dad worked for the church, and it would have been a lot more if they hadn't been so kind and so thoughtful when it happened. But there was so much happening. So remember when I said I tend to dance in circles and never finish a complete thought? Well, that was one of those moments, and I never finished this. The reason that I was bringing it up is because there were a lot of people offering to help financially at the time, and I felt like it was my responsibility, and I felt like I couldn't take anything from anyone because he was my dad. It was my responsibility, but more than that, I wanted to take care of it because I felt like I was proving myself to him, like, even though he was gone. I know that that probably seems weird, but that was where that thought was going. And I couldn't take time off. Like, think about a normal job. You don't get to take months off or a year off. You don't get to stop working. Frankly, I threw myself so hard into YouTube because I didn't want to deal with anything. And I'm not saying it was a good choice, and I'm not saying it was a bad choice. And there was also a lot of controversy around the time of several weeks after the fact. I came back with a video explaining everything, explaining that my dad had passed away. I was so numb in the video. I don't even think I showed any emotion, explaining where I'd been, what was coming, all of that. And there were people who heavily criticized me for monetizing it because I was using my dad's death as profit. And I shouldn't explain myself because there's no point, but I just wouldn't want anyone who's like a genuinely good person and who genuinely cares about me to think I'm awful. If you guys had any clue how rough it was financially, you'd understand that I had taken weeks off of YouTube. And I had that. I had other things going on that, of course, I'm not, you know, like, I don't air my financial business. I don't tell you guys what I'm doing because it's no one's business and because I don't think you care. But most people don't get to take time off of work like I did. And when I did come back, I had to pay for, I'll give you a rundown. There were 3 storage units. I didn't want anyone to touch his apartment in Alaska because I wanted to be the one to go and box up his things. I didn't want anyone going into his house in Georgia. I didn't want anyone taking his car. I didn't want anyone taking my brother's car. If you can kind of think about all of that, let alone the lawyer fees, let alone everything else that I was currently going through at the time, keeping his phone bill on, I was paying all of my expenses, all of my dad's expenses, all of my brother's expenses. I was paying to take care of a funeral and all of these insane lawyer bills that are just still blow my mind. Granted, when someone passes away, the debts are of the estate. And my dad certainly had some funds when he passed away, but he was so secretive and so locked down. It's been really hard. I couldn't even find out where his mortgage was for the longest time. I made a video about that, but I tried to talk about some of it so that you guys understood the level of stress I was under, because I was 23. And if it wasn't for YouTube, I would have drowned. I wouldn't have been able to do any of that. And I'm so grateful, and I know that things happen for a reason, and this saved everything. Is motorcycle, which doesn't run, and I can't get rid of it. I can't get rid of anything. I can't make myself stop, and I can't say I don't have a use for my dad's car. It's sitting somewhere in Alaska. It's been sitting there for a year. It's just got to go back to the bank. There's no point in wasting my money on this. Just like there's no real point in wasting my money on paying the rent at his apartment where no one lives, because I want to be the person who goes and boxes things up, but I never have time. I think that's the other thing, is I realized I had to take time off. I realized eventually, like, I've got to process this, I have to mourn, I have to take some time, and I can't make myself do it. It's not that like I'm pretending it's not happening, it's that I physically can't make myself do it. And I've tried a few times, and every single time I crash and I'm out of commission for days. Why would I want to talk about that? Why would I want to say these things when instead I could tell you a ghost story? And I want to tell them to you guys because I know that it interests you and I know that it makes you happy. And I moved away a lot from body positivity this past year. And I've talked about this a little bit just because I felt like I couldn't like bare my soul anymore. I felt so hurt and so defeated and so torn down that I felt like I couldn't talk about it anymore. I couldn't be vulnerable anymore because I was taking everything that everyone else was saying to heart, and I shouldn't have. The way that you are is different from what people interpret. And I know that I should be less sensitive and less hard on myself because I could open up more. And I could help more people, and that's what I wanted to do from the minute that I really started gaining subscribers from body positivity. At first it was because I was so lonely and because I wanted friends so badly, and I tried to be a beauty guru and it didn't work out for me. But then when I started talking more about bikinis and body positivity and feeling good in your own skin, what it turned into was I impact these people, and people would reach out to me every day and say that I had saved their lives. For me, you guys have saved my life. There was a night at VidCon, and I've never told this subscriber this story, but I cried so hard when I met her, like sobbed, like had to stop, regain my composure, sobbed. There was a girl, I won't say her name just in case she doesn't want to be named, that told me that she had attempted suicide earlier in the year, and how in some small way, whether it was big or small, in some way my videos had helped and I had helped her through it. And I met her girlfriend that day, and her girlfriend said that they watched my videos together and that it, you know, it made them smile in a time when life is so hard. And I was crying so hard because my heart hurt so terribly for her, but also because she didn't know that night earlier, so like 24 hours, not even 12 hours before I had met her, I had felt so worthless, and I had told myself that I didn't deserve to be on earth anymore. And it's that, and I tell people every single day that there's no reason to feel like that, and then I feel like that, and I feel like the world's huge as hypocrite. But I had met her, and I just, because I had felt it like the night before, and I can never completely empathize with what she went through. I can never say I walked in her shoes, but just to know she had felt like I had, it tore me apart. And it made me so grateful that I was able to help her even in the smallest way. And that's me saying the most horrific thing that's ever happened in my entire life out loud to you. And I haven't said that to anybody. I haven't said that to my brother. I haven't said that to my mom. I haven't said that to anyone. I haven't said that to a therapist. So I just wanted to talk about it. There's just a certain level that I try to keep myself at where I don't put everything online, because it's dangerous, because it's hard, because it eats me alive knowing that people think I'm a bad person. This is what I wanted to say. All right, it's probably time to wrap this up. So I love you. If you stayed till the end, I don't even know what to say. I love you. I do. I'll see you soon.